Hello, hi all. So I'm back with another video and today I'm covering the most asked Java, Spring Boot, multi-threading and microservices interview questions. And basically these questions are being the most asked whether you are a fresher or you are a senior or level also. So these questions are being asked from the point of the perspective of the interview. So that today I am covering in this PDF and it contains around 100 plus questions or around 100 questions. And so let's get started. And before that, like, if you haven't like, share and subscribe my channel, please like, share and subscribe my channel. So first question, what is being asked in most of the companies. So what they asked, like, what is JDK, JRE or JVM? So this is a basic level question. If you are a fresher also they can ask, or if you are a senior level also they can ask this question. So because they want to know like how much you are aware about the depth knowledge of Java. So this is the basic question. Most of the students or most of the working professionals ignore these questions, but they ask these questions in the first round sometimes. Like, so JDK stands for the Java Development Kit. You can answer it, and in JDK you can it contains everything. Like, it contains the JRE also, compiler also. It contains the debugger and development tools. So what you can say that JDK is being used by the developers. For example, like, if you are running an application, is suppose you are running an Spring Boot application and there you require the JDK. So you download the JDK and then after that you set the path also to point to that particular JDK version. So you can say that this JDK is being used by developers. It contains everything. It is a development kit which contains JRE also, which contains compiler also, which contains debugger also, which contains the development tools also like Javadoc and JDBG, etc. So it is a combination of like it JRE compiler and everything will be there in JDK and used by the developers. Then for JRE, you can say that it is the Java runtime environment. It provides the environment to run Java programs. Basically, inside JDK only there is JRE, as JDK contains the JRE. But in JRE, what it contains? It contains all the libraries, whichever you import and everything. So this is being provided by the JRE. JRE also contains the JVM. JVM stands for the Java Virtual Machine, which converts our code into byte code and everything. That thing is being taken by care by the JVM. So you can say, firstly we have studied JDK. So JDK contains the JRE compiler and everything. It is a development kit. It is used by the developers. Then we have studied JRE. So JRE contains the JVM core Java libraries used by the users to run the Java apps. So basically it is being used by the users to run the Java applications and Java apps, you can say. And it provides the environment for running the Java programs, as it contains the JVMs, which is very helpful for converting our code into the bytecode. Then the third one is JVM, Java Virtual Machine, which stays inside the JRE. And it what does the JVM do? Whatever the code we write, it executes to the bytecode, responsible for the memory management, garbage collection, security, platform independence. So these are being taken care by the JVM. So JVM, you can say the platform independent is there. Means like your Java program can be run from one machine to another. That is the platform independent. So that's why Java is called the platform independent language also. And apart from this, these JDK and JRE are the platform dependent. These depends on the platform. But JVM, which executes the bytecode, this is platform independent. Just remember this thing. Okay. So flow example, Java dot Java file we have created. Then it creates then it inside it, Java compiler is there. From Java compiler it creates the dot class file, or bytecode for it converts. Then it goes to JVM. Then JVM executes this bytecode and gives the output, which we get into the console. So from the interview tip perspective, you can say that JDK is development, JRE is runtime, JVM is the execution engine, which executes our bytecode, which have been generated by the Java compiler from the Java dot class file. This dot class file, you are aware, right? Suppose dot Java file we save it, right? So internally it creates a dot class file for each Java files. Then, so this is the basic question, and it has been asked in many of the interviews like JDK, JRE, and JVM. Please don't go forward with the videos. I will explain each and every questions. If you are aware about these questions, but don't skip the video or don't fast forward it. And then second is explain class loader in Java with example. So basically, class loader is nothing. It is a JVM subsystem that loads .class files into the memory dynamically at a runtime. This is the another important interview question, and most of you are not might be aware about the class loader. So basically, class loader, you can say it loads the .class file, or in other words, you can say, suppose if you want to load any configuration properties file, or you want, suppose for example, you want to read a file like from different path, and that file is being present at the class path in your application. So with the help of the class loader, you can easily read it. Class loaders are different types. Like first type is bootstrap class loader, then second is extension platform class loader, then third one is application class loader. So bootstrap class loader, what it does, that it loads the core Java classes like string, object, these classes it loads. Then extension platform class loader, it loaded the classes from the library or extensions, different. Then application class loader, it loaded the user defined classes. These three class loaders are there. So what you can tell to the interviewer, that class loaders are basically wherever we need, suppose some app, configuration properties file we need to load dynamically when our Spring Bean is being created or while running the application. So there we can use it easily. With the help of the class loader, we can suppose for example, we can read any file at the runtime from the given path. Like in the class path, we have defined that file, and then we want to read, so that work can be done by the class loader. Then there is a parent delegation model. So Java asks no, not sorry, not Java. JVM asks parent class loader first, improves security, avoid duplicate loading. So this is the parent delegation model inside the class loader. Wherever the like JVM firstly checks the parent class loader first, improves the security and duplicate loading. If it is already being the class is being loaded, so it will not try to load another one. And then for example, you can say for like this is test.class.get loader. So this is the, suppose this is the user class you have defined, and then we are printing or calling the get class loader. So this will return the application class loader. See here, app class loader, because this belongs to a third category where we are loading the user defined class. Then we are calling string.class.get class loader. So this is type of the bootstrap class loader. If you have so where we are calling the core Java classes like string, object. So it will return null, because this is the initial one. So it will return the null, and it's the native one, you can say. So three types you are there, and class loader is a part of the JVM subsystem, you can say, which loads the .class files into the memory dynamically at a runtime. Then another thing is there, that it follows the parent delegation model. Like JVM firstly checks whether that particular class loader has been loaded or not. If it does not, then it will call the another, and this avoids the duplicate loading also. Then the third question is another, or the basic interview question, which has been asked whether if you are fresher also, so or if you are a senior also. Like explain me the system.out.println statement. This is a simple question. Nowadays, like from the experienced person, they are not skipping this question, but from the point of the freshers, they are asking this question. Like if you are at 0 to 3 years experience, so they can this question might be asked. There are chances of 70 to 80%. They want to know like whether you are working properly, or you are aware about the knowledge of this Java. So what system.out.println or SOP statements do, that system is a final class, and the class which are final, we can't like override it. You are aware about it. Then second is out. So out is the static variable or static object, you can say, of print stream. System is a class which is of type final. Out is a static print stream object. Then println, it's is a method, you can say. Two brackets are there, so you can say that it's a method. It prints data plus new line. So as we are using println, so it will this different print methods are there. Like print is there, println is this. So println will, what it will do, it will print the data plus the new line. So internal flow is there from system to print stream, from to console. So system is a final class, out is a static object, and println is a method which is present in the print stream class, you can say. Println is a method of print stream, not system. This is another interview tip, you can say, that from it println belongs to print stream, not to system. System is another final class, and print stream is another class where println method is being present there. So you can explain is this SOP statement interview question is very important. Then fourth one is public static void main. So you need to explain this. This is the main flow of the application. If the statement is being present public static void main, compiler checks the whole application, whether you are creating a big application, Spring Boot application, whether you are running your Java program. So everywhere main method or main thread should be present. Compiler should firstly go through the main thread. It executes the main method, then further logic is being executed. So you need to explain like what this statement stands for. So public is like the keyword, you are aware about it, like public, private, protected is there. So public is the JVM must access it from anywhere. Like public, you can, if you are creating public class or public you are writing anywhere, so JVM can access it from anywhere. Then static is the keyword we are using for the method. So for JVM does not create object to call main, like for the methods which are created as a static methods, so we does not need to create the objects for those method, and those methods can be called directly. So that is the main advantage. So that's why we have made this main method as a static. Then void we uses so that it doesn't return anything. We do not want this main method to be written anything. We further execute or we keep our logic inside this main method. Then JVM does not expect return value from void. Then string args is the command line arguments, which is the main thing from for this main method. If you remove this or if you keep any other arguments, so it's then compiler will treat it like a normal method. It will not consider this five six things are important for a compiler to letting know that this is the public static void method with the string arguments. Then only it will execute it. From command line perspective, you can test these arguments. You can pass it like argument 0 equals to hello, Java test hello. So argument 0 equals to hello. So different scenarios are there for testing it. But the thing is that remember this thing, that compiler will be checking this whole thing, whether you contain the string args, whether it contains the public static void main, then only it will execute it. So main is a static because JVM calls it without object creation. This is the interview tip. Just I have captured this interview tips. Sometimes if it is good also, and sometimes like you can skip also. But I have made this PDF from the just to revise your concepts and from the point of the perspective of the interview if you are preparing of it. So the next question, like how you can read the values dynamically from the config server without restart. So config server is there. Suppose you create two things, config server and config client in the microservices architecture. So in microservices architecture, like if you are creating two things, so in config server, what you do, you keep your all the application YML or application.properties like DB credentials. Suppose for example Kafka credentials and different server port, application name, and various things you keep it in the config server. And from the config server only, like your other services like product service, order services, it can load the properties from the config server by connecting with the help of the config client. Suppose for example config service Netflix Eureka server, and then we have the Netflix Eureka client also. Your config client, sorry, not Netflix Eureka client. So that client will read all the properties in that particular microservices from the config server. So sometimes the advantage of using the config server is that we just do the changes in the config server anything, and the services like product service, order microservices are there. So they just they do not need any other changes. Just all the things will be managed by the with the help of the config server only. And so the question arises, suppose if you want to do any changes in the config server and without restarting your application, so what you can do, you can two things are there, Spring Cloud config dependency is required plus @refresh scope is required. So refresh scope, what it does, like if you have done any changes in the config server inside it, so without restarting your application, refresh scope will load all the properties dynamically in the runtime, and your services like product service will read it dynamically and nothing will be required. So this is the important interview question from the point of perspective of your, if your skills contain the microservices. So this is the most important microservices question for the experienced persons. So how it works, config is stored in Git, then config server exposes it, and then client fetches config, actuator refresh reloads value. So actuator refresh means that Spring health check will reload these values, and at the dynamic time you will able to your application will be able to see that those values without restarting your application even in the production also. So that is the main advantage of using at the rate refresh scope with the help of the from the config server. So for example, at the refresh scope you have kept on the REST controller. So this annotation we kept it wherever it dynamically loads the values from the config server, or wherever we are using at the rate configuration. So we keep this also at the refresh scope, so that if any in the future, if any changes are being done in the config server, so your production application should dynamically read all the values from there. And for reading it, we use this at the rate value we have injected, and that value will be injected in the message, string message. At the rate refresh scope interview tip enables runtime refresh without restart. That we have learned it. Now sixth question comes: how to fix memory leak problems. This is the another most important question, that like memory leaks occur sometimes in your production application or in your Java application. So what it does, that it stops your application, and maybe the cause of this memory leak problem will be like it can give you the out of memory error, and it can be caused, like suppose if you have unclosed DB connections, or if you have unclosed resources which are being not used, and it is cause taking lot of memory in the application. So that's why this memory leaks problem comes. Objects are no longer used but not garbage collected. Got it? So the garbage collection was not being able to called, and objects are taking lot of memory there, so these memory leaks problem occur there. Causes: static references, unclosed resources, listless references. These are the causes of the memory leak problems. And how to fix it: close the resources, use weak references, analyze heap dump. So heap dump is a like type of, you can say that it contains the errors and everything in the logs, and so from the heap dump you can easily analyze like what was the cause of that particular problem. So that's why we uses the heap dumps, and these are being initially stored into a heap memory only. Then close resources, and what we can say, that suppose we have the finalize method is there, and we have created one DB connection, or we have like we have opened one transaction for doing any suppose queries or something like that, and we forgot to close it. So there we can close inside the finalize method. That is the good tip. Then tools, what we can do: J visual VM is there, J profiler is there, mat is there. So these are the tools for analyzing these memory leaks problems. And apart from this, like what you can do, you can create the logs in your whole application, add the zipkin server, or add the something tracker, something like that, which easily tracks your errors in your whole application, and which will be very helpful, like from which service or for which uh, particular service is giving that particular error. So for analyzing the error, it is very helpful. Then interview tips: memory leaks cause out of memory error, which I told you. Then seventh question, this is being asked in the from the point of the interview, or like from the freshers perspective also, and sometimes they ask from the seniors also, like what is OOPS concept. It is, this is the very easy question from the seniors perspective. If you want, you can skip. So four pillars are there, like encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction are there in OOPS concept. OOPS stands for object oriented programming style, and in four pillars are there. So encapsulation is there, that you data heading is there, that everything you wrap it into a single class, and only the necessary part is being shown to the user. So that is encapsulation. And inheritance, so in inheritance what we do, that child classes uses the properties of the parent class, and inheritance also solves the problem of the diamond problem, if you are aware about it, that two parents are there and one child is there. So child will be confused like from which parent it will try to implement or extend a particular class. So that can give the error. So to avoid the diamond problem, inheritance is there, and different types of inheritance is there: single inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, hybrid inheritance. Multiple types are there. Then polymorphism: compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism. So in compile time polymorphism, method overloading is there. So in method overloading, same method with the different parameters or different arguments is being called. Like suppose we want to have the shape, area of the rectangle, area of the circle. So the different method names will be there, but with the different arguments also it can be passed. Same method name, sorry, same method name will be there, but with the different arguments. And in runtime polymorphism, you are aware that that is method overriding. So in method overriding, we override the method of the parent class. So that is method overriding. Then data abstraction is there. Encapsulation and abstraction, just a minute difference is there, that it performs the data hiding, and in abstraction it hides the implementation of your code. Only the necessary part, suppose for example there is an application and end user doesn't know how it works, so that is data abstraction, you can say, for the example. It what code is being written, which library you are using, what you are using internally, so that is being hidden from the point of the interview user. So that is the data abstraction. But in encapsulation, you keeps all the logics in the class, and sometimes that method is being called from different class, for example. So that method from where it is being called, you doesn't want to show the all the logic to the end user. So that is the data encapsulation, which wraps all the data variables and methods in a single class. So that is data encapsulation. This is the example I've taken. Just ignore the example. Then interview tip: OOPS improves maintainability and reusability. So inheritance gives the advantage of the code reusability. These are the four pillars of the OOPS concept. Then 8 question: difference between throw and throws. So with the word only, you can say that throw is used to throw a single exception. Throws is used to declare multiple exceptions with the method signature. Throws will be used with the method signature. Throw will be used inside that, like try block or catch block, and then you are throwing the particular exception there and only. Used inside method, used in method signature. Used to create exception, throw, and throws used to propagate. For example, throw new IO exception. So inside the catch block, you are throwing this particular exception. Throw is action. Interview tip: just remember, throws is declaration with the method signature. It is declaring multiple exceptions. It is throw is throwing one exception. Then difference between final, finally, and finalize. There is already a separate video on my channel. If you guys haven't watched, I have explained there in much more detail. Here I will not go in detail. So final is a class, final is a variable, final is a methods, and once these things like final variable is there, so it becomes the constant. Final class is there, so method overriding can't be performed. Then uh, method over not final method is there, so method overriding can't be formed, and if final class is there, so child class can't inherit that final class. Inheritance is not possible for the final class. Then finally is the cleanup block, which is being called after the try catch, and in finally we keep those statements which are being executed whether the exception has been occurred or not. Then finalize is a garbage collection method. Once the garbage collection is being removes the objects, then finalize method can be called to remove everything, like object references, everything. So then finalize method can be called. But there's an tip is there, you can say it like interview point of perspective, that finalize from Java 9 plus onwards, finalize has been deprecated. As finalize, this advantage was that we are not sure like when will be the finalize method will be called. So for the object restriction, you can say. So that's why from Java 9 plus onwards, we are using try with resources instead of the finalize. Try with resources comes with the features that when you declared any, suppose you create new for reading, you create the streams inside the try with resources. So once the operation is being done, so it will automatically close that resource. So that is the main advantage of try with resources. So try with resources is being more preferred from Java 9 plus onwards instead of the finalize method. Prevents inheritance, always executes by GC. Finally will be always executed, as I mentioned, whether the exception is occurred. Finalize will be called by the garbage collector. Finalize prevent inheritance. Finalize is deprecated Java 9 plus onwards. Double equals versus equals method. So double equal compare the references, equals compare the content, like whether the content is being same. There is another video on this, not going in detail much. Like there is a separate video on this in my Java interview course. Both videos are being there. Please go and watch it if you haven't watched. Why string is immutable? Next question. So strings are immutable so that once we have created, we can't change its content. The first thing is there. If somehow like we have made the strings mutable, so anyone can easily change the content of that particular string. So that's why there was a introduced that string will be immutable. Reasons were there that once we have declared the string, so that string can be used multiple times from the point of the security perspective, from the point of the caching perspective. Thread safety is there in strings as they are immutable. Hash map key stability is there. Hash map key stability is there, so that's why the strings are immutable. Like you can keep the hash map key as a string, and that will be stable as because strings are immutable. You can say immutability allows a string pool. This not explained properly, but a string inside a string pool, like the same object will be used by the another object, you can say. And then like suppose string s equals to suppose some name is there, a is there, string s equals to a we have declared, then later on string s1 we have defined it, and then you are again defining it to a. So in string constant pool is a special type of memory inside the heap memory. All the objects are being stored inside the heap memory. So in string constant pool, it firstly checks whether that particular string object is there or not with the value. Like if a was already being there, so string s1 equals to a, again we have defining it, so that s1 will also point where s is pointing to a. So that is the main advantage, or the caching you can say, or the security perspective you can say. So that's why we have made the string sets immutable. How HashMap works internally, this also I have covered in one of the Java interview experience. So in HashMap, basically it generates the internal data structure is hash table. It generates the based on the hash key, it generates the index, or based on the you can say hash code, like it internally based on the key it generates the hash code first. Then this based on the hash code, it tries to store into the buckets. By default the size of the hash map is 16. Once it reaches the threshold value is 0.75, and once it reaches the threshold, so it just doubles the size, like from 16 to 32. Then again if it reaches the threshold, so from 32 to 64. So that is the hash map, that it generates the hash code, and based on the hash code it stores the values into the bucket. Then but sometimes it generates the same hash code for suppose two keys. Then there is a condition occurs, which is the fourth point, hash collision. So to resolve this hash collision, there is a linked list before Java 8 onwards, that one after another node we keep that particular what we can say value inside the bucket. But from Java 8 onwards, if the linked list also becomes full, or sometimes linked list is not capable of being handling the hash collision, then we have the tree data structure. So Java 8 uses the red black tree after threshold it reaches inside that. And and suppose there is another interview question I just remember right now. Like suppose if hash we override the hash code in equals, right? And while overriding it in the hash code method, we are returning the same value or some same constant every time. So what will happen there? Like there will be exception or error will occur after some duration of time, as because if it is returning the same hash code every time, so it will form the hash collision condition. Then it will try to store into the same bucket each like it will follow the linked list or tree also one after another. Suppose it will try to store it, but once the data structure becomes large, or it will try to store, suppose you think now if you try to store each and everything to other into a single bucket and other buckets are empty, so at a certain time when this data structure also becomes full, so it will throw some exception. So that's why that is the point of perspective from the interview perspective. This question was being asked in many of the interviews, like if you throw the same constant value from the hash code, so what will happen? So it will throw exception after some time, so that's why we do not need to return same constant value. It will learn it, like it will not give an error initially, but after some time it will cause the performance issue in the hash map. So that is not advised. Then 13 question is there, hash map versus concurrent hash map. So concurrent hash map is also the sub hash map of the hash map only. Hash map points to the hash table data structure. Concurrent hash map internally follows the hash map only. Just the difference is that in concurrent hash map it allows the thread safe, or you can say like while doing the modification, it doesn't throw the concurrent modification exception. So what is concurrent modification exception? So suppose you in initial hash map you are storing the key and values, then you are iterating it, but while iterating it you are trying to add some more values, then it will throw the concurrent modification exception. To avoid the concurrent modification exception or to make the thread safe, we have the concurrent hash map. At the same time, like while iterating, if you are adding values, so it other threads can read that particular other values, but for modification it will log some certain bucket, that is also called the bucket loading also. But so that's why concurrent hash map is thread safe. And whenever the particular data structure is thread safe or something like that, so it will be slightly slower in performance as compared to hash map. In HashMap, it allows null as a key, but in concurrent HashMap, it doesn't allow null as a key. Array list versus linked list. This is another most important question. Like nowadays, they are asking scenario-based question, but in the first round of questions interview, you can get these types of question in first to second round. That array list versus linked list. So array list internally data structure is having dynamic array, linked list is having the doubly linked list. In array list, at it is having the dynamic array, so retrieval of elements is much faster than compared to linked list. So retrieval property is much faster, so for retrieving the elements, whenever the retrieving element is required, so you go with the array list. But if insertion or deletion of elements are required, so then we go to the linked list, because in linked list node pattern is there, right? So you can easily remove the node from the between, and then you can just point at node 1 to node 3, and you have removed node 2. So that is very easy with linked list. So insertion deletion is very good with linked list, but in array list retrieval of elements is good. Then static keyword used for variables. Static variables are there, static methods are there, static blocks are there, static nested classes are there. Nested classes or the inner classes we can say are there. Static belongs to class, not object. Not going like static. Okay, let me explain one by one. That static variable, if you are declared, so only one copy of variable will be used, or by the other variables objects also. Once you have defined one static variable, then static method can be called without objectation, which we have already been seen inside the public static void main. Then static block will be executed before the class before the main method. So static blocks are very useful there also. And then like when we have the inner classes are there, like class A is there, inside there some inner classes are there, so that inner classes can be made as static. So static belongs to class, not object. Can we override the static method? No. Static methods are compile time binding, not runtime polymorphism. We can't override the static method, that is not possible. As already I have answered it, that static belongs to class, not the object. Then 17th question, abstract class versus interface. This is the another important interview question. Then in abstract class, you it provides you the what you can say, like some differences are there. Already one video is being there in on my channel. Difference between abstract class and interface. There I have defined it in a much more deeper level. If you go, please go and watch it there. So multiple methods are there, and interface pure abstraction is there, and abstract state allowed, or interface no state allowed. So let me explain you that this is the theory part. So in interface you can declare the variables. Once you have declared it, so you need to initialize the variables inside the interface. So that is very important. But in abstract class, it is nothing like that, that you can declare the variables. Initialization of that particular variables are not important. In interface, those variables can be only public, static, and final are allowed inside the interface for the variables. But in abstract class, all the access modifier are allowed, like public, static, final. There's no compulsory compulsion is there. And interface, it provides 100% abstraction, and in abstract class it is having the multiple method, so it doesn't provide like sometimes the 100% abstraction you can say. Then the next question is there, 18th, which is the marker interface. So in marker interfaces are those interfaces which contains no methods used for the metadata. We implement those interfaces, but they contain internally, they doesn't have any methods. For example, marker interfaces are serializable is there, clonable is there, and random access is also there. So in if a class is implementing the serializable and clonable, so it will not contain any method. You need to override some methods of object class. So then, like there can be a sub question for this one, like which I have also faced. That if you are like implementing the clonable interface, interviewer can ask, like then what is the need if it contains if it doesn't contain any method, so why we are implementing this clonable or serializable? For example, suppose if you are implementing the clonable interface for cloning the objects, but it will override the clone method of the object class, as clonable doesn't contain any methods and class A is implementing the clonable. So then why it is required? So it is required from the point of the JVM perspective, that JVM checks whether your class is implementing the clonable or not, and then after that it checks for the clone method, and then the clone or the clone method will be called there. But if you remove the clonable interface of by implementation, and you're directly cloning the object or trying to clone, so it will throw the clone not supported exception, something like that. So that's why it is very important from the point of JVM, that your class should implement the clonable if you want to clone any object. Then transient keyword. So transient keyword prevents you from the serialization. So serialization is the way process where we convert your object form into a byte string form. Suppose you want your DTO class or your entity class needs to be saved into the file. So there we implement the serialization with by declaring the serial version UID. And suppose there are some fields which you do not want to be serialized or save into the file, so that you can declare transient in password support, for example. So this field will not be serialized at the runtime, and it will be ignored from the serialization process. Then 20th question, comparable versus comparator. So both are used for the sorting perspective in the Java 8. It got introduced. From Java, comparable and comparator were there earlier also before Java 8, not in Java 8. Sorry, my bad. But from Java 8 onwards, you can easily, with the help of the lambda expression, you can easily write this comparable comparator in one line. So comparable is used for the natural sorting order or the default sorting order, and comparable will sort only for the only single field or single property of that particular employee class, suppose is there. But comparator you can sort based on the multiple fields. Like there is a most important Java 8 interview question, that you need to sort by name also, and then by age also. So using dot then comparing, you can sort based on both. In comparable, it is having the compare to method, and in comparator it is having compare and equals method. It is the default sorting order, it is the customized sorting order. Comparator, you can say, comparable is used for the sorting only one field, it will sort it whichever order you want to sort it, but comparator will, you can sort multiple fields. The next questions are of the exception handling, difference between the checked and unchecked exceptions. So checked exceptions are checked at the compile time, must be handled using try, catch or throws. And for example, checked exceptions are IO exception, SQL exception. And unchecked exceptions are also checked. Both exceptions are checked by the at the runtime. But okay, this there is a minute mistake. It is checked at the compile time, but both runs at the runtime only. And unchecked exceptions are checked at the runtime and extend the runtime exception. For example, unchecked exceptions are a null pointer exception, array index out of bound exception is there. Both runs at the runtime. Exceptions both occurred at the runtime only, but the thing is there that there is a different category, that it will be checked at the compile time. Like compiler will check whether this being handled or not. It will throw the sometimes it throw the exception there only. But in unchecked exception, what it does, that after the compiler has been checked, then it throws the exception. This checked exceptions are very necessary to be handled, and then after that, with the help of the try catch or throws, it should be properly handled. Suppose file not found exception is there for the checked exception, or IO exception is there, or SQL exception is there, so you should handle this checked exceptions. You should handle this also, but it will be unchecked exception, so it will throw the exceptions. Then checked equals to recoverable, and unchecked equals to programming mistakes. Unchecked are being occurred from the programming mistakes or the coding perspective, you are, but checked are recoverable. What is exception propagation? This is also being asked. When an exception is not handled in a method, it is passed to the calling method. So that is the exception propagation. Suppose the controller is there, service layer is there, and then DAO layer is or this there. So inside DAO layer, some exception was being there, or suppose there were you have not handled the exception there inside the DAO layer, and in service layer you are handling the exception while calling that DAO layer method. So that exception will be handled by the service layer method. So that is the exception propagation, you can say. For example, void m1 is there, so m1 is being called inside the m2. So this m2 will be handling if any exceptions occurred in m1, so it will be you can see that 10 upon 0 is there, yeah. So it will give the exception, and as it will give the infinite, so it will cause the exception. So for that, like m2 is handling the suppose exception, so m2 will be handling this exception of m1 also. Propagation interview tips: propagation works only for unchecked exceptions by default. Can we have multiple catch blocks? Another interview question. So yeah, we can have the multiple catch blocks, but there are some certain rules inside. Like try with multiple catch blocks is allowed. This is the most asked interview questions from the freshers point of perspective, like 0 to 3 years or 0 to 4 years. This is the important interview question. Like sometimes they ask that you can have the multiple catch block, but there are certain rules that child exception will be first, then parent exception. If you keep this exception first, then arithmetic exception will be at the last, so it will throw the error only. Compile error: if parent catch comes before child, it will give the compile error. What happens if exceptions occurs in finally block? Yeah, this is the another question, that in exception in finally overrides the original exception. Suppose you have trying to throw some exception inside the finally block, so it will override the original exception which was being getting occurred. It is a dangerous behavior, it is not allowed, but sometimes by mistake if someone has done, and this being asked in the interview, so avoid throwing the exceptions in the finally block. So a finally block will override the original exception. Can constructor throw the exception? Yes, it is allowed. Constructor can throw the exception, but object creation fails if constructor throws the exception. See here, this is a default constructor and it is throwing the exception, but the object creation will be fail. The if you are trying to, if constructor throws the exception, you can't create the objects directly from the constructor. How do you create a custom exception? So just extend create any class, custom exception class, suppose extend exception or runtime exception, create a constructor there and pass the string message, and then so call with the help of the super keyword, just call this message, and then wherever you need to throw this particular business exception, just pass the message and this particular exception will be thrown. Use runtime exception for unchecked business errors. Interview tip. What is try with resources? I have already discussed. Automatically closes resources. Suppose file reader was being opened and it got introduced in Java 7 version, and once this try block is being executed, so this file loader reader will be automatically closed. So that is the main advantage of using the try with resources. Trust me, this is the most asked interview question in many of the product based companies or the service companies. Just if you want, just go on detail or let me know in the comments. I will make a more detailed video in my comments, and watch all my Java interview course or Java interview playlist. I have captured all the most asked or most interview questions. And like if you're going to different platforms and you are paying for it for these content, so just have a look on this, and keep preparing for the interviews, keep applying it, and just being confident on the lead code problems also, just keep solving also for having the logic, and be aware about all the Java versions. Yeah, that's it. And let's go on with another interview question. And please, guys, please like, share, and subscribe my channel if you haven't liked, share, and subscribe. And for further doubts or for further clarification, please reach me on TopMate also. I have already been created on my profile on TopMate, so I can like easily connect with you on TopMate and give you tips. You if any guidance or if you want any solutions to any problems, so please reach me on TopMate. I will help you there also. So next question is difference between error and exception. So errors are not occurred by us, but exceptions are occurred by us. Application issues. Exception is recoverable. Errors are not recoverable. So as I mentioned, errors are not due to our fault, but exceptions are occurred due to our fault. It's our application issue. It is recoverable exception, but errors are not recoverable. It can be due to some system resources or memory is not there, and you are trying to run the Java application which consumes the larger memory. So that is the error. What is rethrowing an exception? Catching and throwing again is the rethrowing an exception. So catch exception is there, and then inside that again you are throwing throw e. So that is the rethrowing an exception. Best practices for exception handling: never swallow exceptions, log properly, log.error for each, if you are having the errors and exceptions are there. Use custom exception. Use another tip is there, used create global exception handler class wherever required. Log each and every exception using the logger.one or logger.error. Avoid generic exception, and follow the rules while creating or calling the multiple catch blocks inside the try. Then multi-threading and concurrency. So what is multi-threading? Multiple threads execute concurrently to improve performance. Use cases are web server or background tasks, where we are multiple threads are running for executing different at the same time for different process of that particular program. So that is the multi-threading, you can say. And by implementing runnable interface, by extending thread class, we can create the thread, and then we can call it using the run method, not sorry run method, we can call it using the start method, then thread will be created. Thread and runnable. Thread is a class, runnable is an interface. This is the difference between thread and runnable. Single inheritance supports multiple inheritance. Interview tip: runnable is preferred. What is synchronization? Synchronization solves the problems of the data inconsistency. Means at the same time, if multiple threads are trying to access the same resource, so sometimes data inconsistency problem occur. So to ensure only one thread access shared resource at a time, so we provide the synchronized void print. So this is the intrinsic type of locking. There are two types of locking in multi-threading: intrinsic type of locking and extrinsic type of locking. So intrinsic is the locking which is being handled, or implicit locking is there, that is also called intrinsic or implicit. So that is we are providing using the synchronize, that at the same time only single thread is being allowed. What is deadlock? How to avoid it? So through two threads are waiting for each other logs, like T1 is there thread, T2 thread is there. T1 is accessing, is holding the resource R1, and T2 is holding the resource R2, and T1 is trying to access the resource R2, and T2 is trying to access the resource R1, but T1 already holds the R1 and T2 is trying it. Similarly, T1 is trying to access the resource R2 and T2 but already holds it. So for that thing, like deadlock occurs, that is the situation. For example, I have in my last video in Nomura Java interview questions, they have asked the print even and odd threads from 0 to 10. So there also, like if you have not properly handle it, or if you haven't logged that particular object, so it can throw that, or it can occur into the deadlock situation. So that's why we have called that particular wait method, and we have used the synchronized for intrinsic locking, so that at a time only one thread can access that particular object whose ever turn is there. Use try logs, avoid nested logs, lock ordering. Avoid these things, you need to avoid lock ordering, avoid nested logs, use try log for deadlock conditions. Next question, there are some certain methods of multi-threading of the object class: wait, sleep, notify all. So wait, what it does, it releases the lock. Sleep, it holds the lock. It sleeps means it pauses the threads for some duration of time, what you ever mentioned inside the sleep method. Then wait, it releases the locks for that particular, and it gives the opportunity to some other thread to be executed. Wait is of object class and sleep method is of thread class. What is volatile keyword? Volatile ensures visibility across thread. Volatile is used where we have the variables, like it is having also the same concept of synchronization, but volatile works with the variable, and volatile does not equals to synchronization, it prevents caching. Synchronized method versus block. So synchronized method, whole method will be there, block is specific block is there. Synchronized method less efficient, and block is more controlled. These are one liner. If you want, go just go on depth. I am not covering as many questions are there, so I in a time specific manner I am providing you the more detailed, not much detailed answer for some of the questions which are less important, or if you want you can read it on your also on your own also, but these questions are very important. The whole PDF is very important from the point of perspective, so that's why I've created. So what is executor framework? It manages the thread pool, it provides the management of the threads, you can say, improves the performance, and resource management is there. That executors.new fixed thread pool, most good question or most favorite question of the interviewers, like of the point of the multi-threading. Like what is executor framework? It manages the thread management or the resource management, you can say. And suppose dot new fixed thread pool, so 5 threads will be there. It will be created by the executor, and different methods are there. Executor dot shutdown, and different methods are there. Just covering this much here. It manages the thread pool, just remember this for executor framework. Callable versus runnable. So callable returns a value, but runnable doesn't return anything. Just remember things. This has been asked, like where you will use the callable and where you will use the runnable for creating the thread. But it callable, just remember, returns the value, and runnable doesn't return any value. Callable throws the exception, and runnable cannot throw the exception. So these are the major differences. What is thread safe collection? And thread safe collection means that particular collection at the same time multiple threads can access it. One already we have discussed concurrent hash map is there. Similarly, copy on write array list is there. So these are the two thread safe collections, you can say, or you can answer it. And like at the same time multiple threads can access it. And from the point of the memory and performance, how do you identify the memory leaks or memory leak error, which I have discussed earlier also. So heap dump analysis is there, which you can do it analysis in the heap dumps, like of why the particular error is or why this memory leak error is being occurred. Monitoring GC is there. Profiling tools are there. Some different profiling tools are there. Like Prometheus is there. Grafana is there for the larger microservices application. So you can easily identify the memory leaks with the help of the stack versus heap memory. So stack is the smaller in size memory. Heap are the largest in size memory. Stack you have stores the method calls. Heap stores all the objects which are created. In stacks is faster memory. Heap is slower memory. Stack is thread specific. Heap is shared memory among the threads. So next question, causes of out of memory error, like why this out of memory error occurs. This can be asked, like due to first condition, memory leaks, large objects, insufficient heap was available in the application. So these things are there. Then what is weak reference? So there are two things inside the garbage collector, like weak reference and strong references are there. So weak references objects will be created first used by the garbage collector, used in caching, but strong references objects are or will also be collected by the garbage, but it will be collected after some duration of time. How to analyze heap dump? There are tools Eclipse Mat and JVisual VM. You can easily analyze the heap dumps there. Then next question, what is metaspace? So metaspace is a type of memory which got introduced from Java 8 onwards. It is a dynamic memory. Dynamic memory means from Java from before Java 8 we were having the permanent generation memory, and which was the static in nature memory. Like once it got full, so again we need to clear it. But this metaspace is the dynamic memory. It grows dynamically. It replaces the permanent generation memory. It stores the class metadata. How garbage collector works from Java 8 plus onwards, Java 8 onwards, young generation, old generation, minor garbage collection, major garbage collection are there. Young generation where the objects does not stay for larger duration of time. Old generation memory, these are memory types where the garbage collector works. So old generation where the object stays for the larger duration of time, and similarly minor garbage collection, major garbage collection are there also. Like minor will be removing some part of that particular references of the objects. Major will be the it will be called major garbage collector wherever you need to remove more objects. So minor garbage collector versus major garbage collector, another question, sub question you can say. So minor, it is having the young generation, it will be called on the young generation memory. Major garbage collection will be called on the old generation memory. Minor is fast garbage collector, major is slow. Now the next questions are based on the Spring and Spring Boot. So Spring, you already there is a video in my on my channel like what is Spring Boot. So there I have discussed the advantages or disadvantages of the Spring Boot over the Spring. Just I am going fast here. Like Spring is we do the manual configuration everything. In Spring Boot, auto configuration is there. Embedded Tomcat server is there, and in Spring you need to provide the external server. In Spring Boot there is an embedded database also, S2 database is there. So in Spring Boot less you need to you need to just define the dependencies and everything, and Spring Boot will take care. But in Spring you need to define XML files and everything. Manual configuration is lot of is there. So that's why Spring Boot is being more preferred nowadays than Spring. What is dependency injection? Objects provided by container instead of manual creation. Like we can create the object, or we can inject another object of that particular, suppose class A, class B is there. So class B is the component. So for that bean will be created, and class as we have marked as a component for class B. So Spring Boot will we internally know, okay, for this is class we need to create the bean, and class B we can inject using auto into class A. So that is the dependency injection, and this is the principle of the what you can say IOC, which is the inversion of control container principle. It IOC, what it does, it manages the object creation, it manages dependency injection, it manages the life cycle of the object, how it is being created. What is Spring Boot application? So Spring Boot application is a combination of three things: configuration, just remember, enable auto configuration, and component scan. So configuration is used for defining the beans. Enable auto configuration, where you have defined like all the dependencies which you have defined. So it will wherever you are using any annotations. So enable auto configuration is having the magic that it manages all the dependencies, every jars and everything, whatever it is required. So it maintains in on the class path. So you doesn't need to provide any jars or something like that. Enable auto configuration will do each and everything. Component scan, it will scan all the packages where your all the code logic is there, and sometimes you can provide externally also from that scan packages equals to, and you can mention the package name. Component, service, repository already being discussed. So three things are there. Repository advantage is there that all the three can be interchanged. Like instead of repository you can use component, service, but the thing is that repository comes with an exception handling feature, so that's why repository is being used. And service, you defined for telling the other users of like it contains the business logic. Component, it you define it on the class level, that it tells the Spring Boot that for this class you need to create the bean. Repository handle the DB exception, already I have told. Then Spring Boot auto configuration uses class path, conditions, and starters. It auto configures all the dependency which have been defined on the class path, you can say. Global exception handling, you can do uses two annotations: controller advice on the class level, and on the method level for defining your exceptions, exception handler is there. Controller advice, centralized exception handling is there. Then for difference between controller versus REST controller, so controller is the view, REST controller is the JSON you will return. Or other thing you can say that controller, uh, like if you are using the post mapping, then using controller you need to annotate one more annotation, public response body. But in the REST controller, if you're using on the class level, so you do not need to annotate in the for the post mapping for returning the JSON. It as it is a combination of response body plus controller. So that is the main advantage of using REST controller. Response body needed auto. Auto wired, how it works internally, it uses the reflection by type, by qualifier, by name, then it inject into the class. What is transactional? It is also being discussed in my last video of Nomura Java interview questions. Like it manages the DB transactions, that if we uses on that particular method, wherever like we are sure unsure like whether these transaction can be successful, or suppose we are modifying or we are updating, we are calling the update query, custom update query. So there we uses at transactional along with that modifying it, so that if any of the failure occurs, so that transaction will be rolled back easily. That is the main advantage of using at transactional. Microservices questions are there, like microservice already detailed video is there, that is small independent services communicating via REST. Monolithic versus microservices, this also I discussed it. What is config service? Centralized configuration management, wherever there we keep everything in the git, and you can you can your services can fetch it from there. Read config without discard at the refresh scope, already been discussed. Eureka server, service registry and discovery. Service discovery is there. Two things are there in microservices. So there we uses the Eureka server to register each and every service with the in the service registry. So in service discovery, what it does, that it identifies like which microservices is running on which port, what is the status of this. So the service discovery is very helpful. And there inside the service discovery we have the service registry. So there we registers each and every microservices, like what is the status, what is the port, with the help of the Eureka server. API gateway. So API gateway is a single entry point where authentication can also be done, and API gateway can act as a load balancer also for routing the request to each and every microservices. Single entry point. Circuit breaker we uses or resilience force. So these are the fault tolerant, for making the application fault tolerant. These both are same only. Like for implementing the circuit breaker, we uses the resilience force library inside a pom.xml, and for stopping cascading failures we uses the circuit breaker pattern. Like if I go on detail, suppose if an exception has been occurred, or suppose your service is not responding, service B is not responding, so circuit breaker is having multiple state, three states are there: open, half open and closed state is there. So by default the service, if it works very well, service A, service B, so the application will be in the closed state. But as soon as like the service B is not responding, so service circuit breaker will be go into the open state, and service A, which was calling the service B, if it is failing, so it will call the circuit breaker default method. So instead of giving some error or exception to the end user, instead of calling the second service which is not responding, it will give the default method response or default response to the end user, so that a customer will not be impacted. Or so that's why we uses the circuit breaker there. And from the open state, when again after some times it retries, retry to call the class, suppose service A to service B, that service B, if it is back or not, then it retries, and after some certain retries, then if the service B is proper responding it, so it will the circuit breaker will go to the closed state then. Faint client, this is the theory part I will cover in my video. So faint client in another video where I will cover, I need to make will be making the video or series on microservices. So in faint client, basically instead of the REST template you can call using the faint client, and that is being more used as REST template is being deprecated, so most of the companies are preferring or writing their code using the faint client only. Then Saga pattern is there. To Saga pattern manages the distributed transaction. It maintains the asset properties in the database, and not going asset properties in depth. Like asset properties have already been explained in my last video, Namura interview questions. If you haven't watched, please go and watch it. And in Saga pattern basically is being implemented by choreography and orchestration method. So two ways are there. There will be a separate video, more detailed video on Saga pattern. Just keep a note that it manages the distributed transaction, it manages asset properties of the database. Database and JPA interview questions. So what is JPA? It is Java Persistence API. It is specification of for ORM. Through JPA, implementing the JPA repository, we persist our code, or we interact with the database. JPA versus Hibernate. So Hibernate is the popular implementation of the JPA, and through Hibernate we can perform like different queries are there, criteria, detached criteria, and multiple things can be done, mappings can be done, and eager to fetch, lazy loading, eager loading, multiple things are there. So through Hibernate it comes with a lot of features. Just read on detail if you want. Lazy versus eager loading. So lazy loads on demand wherever it requires, but eager, by default, by default here it is lazy, and then whatever it been done, so there. So by default, like for some mappings, there is lazy loading is there. For some mappings, there is eager loading. For example, like one to many or many to many, there is lazy loading. So what is lazy or eager loading? If I go in detail, so in eager loading, like data, suppose there are relationship is there. Like one author can have multiple books, so one to many mapping is there, right? So inside lazy loading, like. Whenever being lazy loading is there, so it will be loaded all the data. Yeah, so basically the batch solution is there. Another solution is that you uses the fetch join query, and you join both the tables order and customer using the native query. This is the best and most common solution, you can say, and no extra queries are being needed using the joining using inside the native query, and you can easily in one SQL query it will Hibernate will load the order and customer based on the join. So that is the resolution of the n+1 problem. Now the next question, transactions in the Spring Boot we uses at the transaction as I mentioned for the rollback. Then optimistic versus pessimistic locking. Optimistic is for version based, pessimistic is lock based. Just remember this thing. If you want more detail, just go and read it, and if you want me to explain, please reach me in the comments or in the top mail. Then the scenario based interview questions also have captured, like how do you fix the production issues. So you log each and every, you write an application such a way that you log each and everything in the logger. Then you capture the each and everything in the matrix using the actuator or the Spring Boot health check. Then you uses address transaction for the rollback. You uses the circuit breaker for the resilience or making the application resilient. And then there is a hotfix also for using the production issues. And further on you can use the tools like as I mentioned for the microservices architecture like Prometheus and Grafana. For handling the high traffic in the microservices or your application, use the load balancer, use the caching algorithm. Like in the larger applications or in the more distributed application, we uses the caching. Then you use the scaling, yeah, that the horizontal scaling of the resources is being done for handling the high traffic. And for async or distributed data environment use, you can say we uses the Kafka there for asynchronous processing. Then next question, exception handling for REST APIs. Global exception handler you can create using address controller advice. Proper HTTP codes you should return, like 404 not found or something like that, using the response entity if you are returning it. Then next question, securing the microservices you can use OAuth 2, JWT or API gateway for securing the microservices. Then distributed transaction, two things comes. Event driven micro architecture we uses the Kafka there, and for Saga pattern is also there for distributed transaction. These things I haven't covered in detail, but if you want, let me know in the comment section. I will make another video of these design pattern, microservices design pattern I've thought. So that's it. These are the most asked or most covered questions which I have covered for the freshers from 0 to 8 to 9 years or 10 years of experience. I have covered here in this PDF, but for some I haven't explained or go into the detail. But if you want, please let me know in the comments. I will make a video for separate on that particular section. Yeah, that's it from my side. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. And if you haven't watched, please go and watch Java interview question series. Yeah, thanks. Bye.